Thank you. Well, I want to thank you, fathers, for joining us today in our panel discussion. The purpose of this discussion is mainly to gather some experience, some knowledge and guidance about Orthodox missions in America, the need for them, how to sustain them, and ultimately growing Orthodoxy in the United States, becoming more relevant, being able to affect culture, and obviously bring more souls to Christ and the true church. I want to remind our viewers, we will be having a good amount of viewers to this panel discussion, that the Q&A section will be open. So as I'm asking questions, they can definitely filter in some questions that we can add in. The broadcast will be replayed on our YouTube channel. And you can find that afterwards by going on YouTube and searching Orthodox Christian Ministry to America. And also a reminder to our viewers, please try to keep your questions pertinent to missions and evangelization in the United States. A little bit about background about our organization, Orthodox Christian Ministry to America, with Share the Faith, is a unique organization, one of a kind, in that we are the only organization that funds Orthodox missions and priests in the United States. For the sustainability and growth of missions, we are currently working with 9 priests, hoping to expand that further in 2024. 1 priest has successfully graduated from our program, and which means he's met the benchmarks, he's moved forward, and his mission has, flourished. You can learn more about OCM America at www.ocmamerica.us. Today in our panel discussion, we have Father Elijah Drake of All Saints Mission in Lodi, California. Really looking forward to learning a little bit more about, how things are moving forward for you, Father, how the benefits of the organization works for you. And we also have Father Dr. Gregory Joyce of St. Vladimir's Church in Ann Arbor, Michigan, who's also Dean of the Pastoral School of the Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia. Fathers, thank you for being here.
Happy to be here.
Anything good. Anything that I miss? Anything that needs to be corrected as we move forward?
I can't think of anything.
Awesome. Okay, perfect. So we can just jump in with the questions. We're going to try to keep this at a hard stop in an hour. Definitely anything longer than that would may prove not to be beneficial. But just to kind of start off, basic question: what challenges do Orthodox missions face in the United States? And if there are challenges, how have they been addressed, or how do we address them? And I can start with you, Father Gregory, since you're off mute.
Yeah, sure, no problem. So one of my duties is to be the dean of our parishes here in Michigan, the Russian Orthodox Church outside Russia. So we have a lot of missions. And I think the real important piece here is how missions can help us to, of course, spread Orthodox Christianity in America. Now, I've already kind of forgotten what your question is, and I'm answering the question I wanted you to ask. But
sure.
I think that we can't underestimate this kind of cell level, maybe not quite cell level, but very important baseline foundational level of how we're going to spread Orthodox Christianity in America. If we're just here to sort of take care of some ethnic museums and then at some point shut up shop and go back to wherever we came from, that's great. But since that's not why we're here, and we're here to spread Orthodox Christianity to the entire continent, then missions are the way that we're going to do that in many, many ways, because there's a lot of people learning about Orthodox Christianity on the internet, but you don't really begin to learn about it until you touch it, until you come. And if you're not in a large city where there's established parishes, then it's going to be missions. And so I'm really excited about the opportunity to help support missions, and I'm excited about the support that your organization is giving to our missions in Michigan. I think it's a really exciting time for us, and I see you playing a really important role here.
Thank you. Father Elijah, anything to add or your take on that question?
No, I agree with Father Gregory completely. I think there's a couple big challenges for missions in America, and one is just accessibility, or Orthodoxy in America accessibility. We see that the internet has helped to kind of spark an interest to give maybe to help people begin their journey. But as we all know, that's not sufficient. You can't be a digital Orthodox Christian. You must be one in person, and you must be part of a parish and be under a priest and bishop. And there's many people that I've known that have started their journey to Orthodoxy online and have struggled because they sometimes even contact me across the country. I'm currently talking with about 3 folks that reached out to me like seemingly randomly, who have been trying to connect with parishes on the East Coast or in the Midwest or different places. And some of them are hours away from the closest Orthodox church and parish. And so accessibility is a big issue. And I think that's something that Share the Faith and Orthodox Mission to America is seeking to address. Is we need to find a way to make Orthodoxy accessible to everybody, truly accessible, and true Orthodoxy, not merely internet Orthodoxy, but actually the life in a parish. So I think that's a big struggle. And then secondarily, we have accessibility and then sustainability. It's very difficult for many missions to sustain the planting and initial establishment stage, not only with finding clergy, but with the stress of bivocational ministry, the resources and the time and the energy it takes to establish something. And so all the support missions can receive from other parishes, from their dioceses, and from organizations like Share the Faith is really, really valuable. And it helps create a sustainable mission that allows people who are part of unsustainable communities and cities and an unsustainable culture in many ways to find a place and find a home and find a place of stability to start their journey, and to have accessibility and that stability so that they might grow in Christ in a good place. Yeah.
Wonderful, wonderful. Thank you. I know both you, Father Elijah, and Father Gregory mentioned the internet. I know that's a big issue in today's age, with kind of the influx of internet orthodoxy. And I definitely don't want to spend too much time on it, but do you believe that online interactions or internet orthodoxy has been overstated in evangelizing or moving towards missions? Or if it has, is there a way to curtail that in a way?
Who do you want to tackle that first?
Either. You can go, Father Gregory.
All right. So what we've observed here from about the time of the pandemic, I guess, is when we really began to see a lot of people who learned about Orthodox Christianity, younger people, by the internet. So I think that the internet is an important missionary tool, and it's certainly an important way that we can reach people that we can't otherwise reach. But I think it's important that we not overstate its effectiveness in kind of finishing that cycle. I would see it as something which is a beginning, like a first step towards the church. But until someone becomes part of a community, they're not really living an authentic Orthodox life. They might learn a lot of Orthodox facts, and they may even begin to adopt the faith, but you're not really living life as an Orthodox Christian as it's envisioned, as all of our fathers and mothers have lived before us. So it has its place, and I think it's an important place, and I think it's important that we be there. But it's limited, I think, to sort of start people towards the church. But until you connect with the community, you've still got a long way to go.
Thank you.
Yeah. Again, I agree 100%. If I was to use an analogy, a personal analogy, I lived a large portion of my life overseas in Southeast Asia. And before I went over there, I wanted to learn the language. I wanted to learn the cultures. I watched movies that came from there. And I had a fascination as I was trying to prepare for life there. I even started to try to learn the language on my own. But all that was just almost a simulacra. It was a preparation. It was an interest, but once you actually move overseas and you actually get to live the life and actually get to speak the language with living people, and you're eating and breathing and living the culture, someone cannot, it'd be absurd to then go back and just merely read books about it. And so I see the internet as almost a brochure for Orthodoxy. It's an invitation, maybe, but once you actually get on that plane and you make it to the destination or to the place, it kind of ceases to have its role, because anything that it would be trying to provide for you, you're going to get in a better and more fuller way actually living there. That's why many people who try to learn language in America and never get to speak the language with anybody struggle. But once you go to a country and you're speaking it every day, even poorly, you acquire it so much faster and so much deeper. And so I find internet orthodoxy to be very much like that. It can be an invitation, but it should never be a substitute. And sadly, sometimes it can also be a distraction. And so there was one person that came to our mission from a Roman Catholic background, drove an hour and a half and visited us and had a really profound experience. But we said, this is not sustainable. You need to find a place near you. And thankfully, he found a place about a half hour away. And one of the first things the priest said when he got there, and he was very excited and said, oh, I've been studying about Orthodoxy online for the last little while. I went to this parish. He goes, great. Now that you've gotten here, put that away and learn here. We'll teach you. Put those internet teachers away. And I think that's a very good principle,
Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you. Yeah, I've always been intrigued with that, and I appreciate both of your answers. So also what we're noticing and kind of pulling a lot of faithful, a lot of converts, a lot of catechumens, or even those who have interest, is that there's kind of a discrepancy in age of individuals. We're seeing a lot of younger individuals coming into the church or being interested in the church for various reasons. And I've even heard calls from priests and or bishops saying that we need to kind of have ministry focused on age groups. Father Gregory, do you believe, is there actually a need to separate any sort of lay ministry, if you would have one in your parish, to kind of target specific age groups, or do kind of all the age groups have the same responsibility? Is that beneficial to kind of focus on the age groups?
I could see it as something that's value added if it's not overly stressed, so that we start breaking people into like distinct and discrete groups. I don't think that we want to do that, because that's not really authentic to the way that the church has ever existed. And that's one of the most important things that we have to offer people. And I find that that's why a lot of people are coming to Orthodox Christianity, is they're seeking for that authentic thing that doesn't change. So for instance, we have youth groups in the parish, we have church school, we have a men's group, we have a sisterhood. Our young families meet a few times a year, we have a dinner. I think all those things are fine, but I think that's got to be a value, that's got to be something that's added to the overall core of the parish being together every Sunday. We have a meal every Sunday. I personally would say, for any mission who's looking at this, do that if you can do it. I mean, in any way, even if you're throwing out a couple of donuts and warm coffee, just do something so that the fellowship can happen after the Divine Liturgy, because those two things, well, they obviously go together, because that was already an apostolic practice. So I think I think we want to provide people the most authentic expression that we can of our Orthodox faith. And I think that's all ages struggling together, because if you think of a parish kind of like how you polish rocks, like you put the rough and not very pretty rocks together, and they just rub together until they're all shiny and beautiful. Maybe not the greatest metaphor, but I think when everybody's together like that, it really does work. But I'm not one that says you should never like get the guys together and build something or do something. I think that also adds value, but I think that's got to be peripheral. The core has got to be everybody together.
Thank you. Father Elijah?
Yeah, again, I completely agree, because we live in a culture, and we know that culturally in the age of algorithms, um, algorithms and marketers like to sort us into different age and preference and isolate us into uh, little tribes in which we only ever interact with other people like us. And you're not going to be you're not going to find holiness if you just stick around with people with the same passions as you. You have to have, Christ established a church that was one body. And anytime we at the core try to divide this body up, primarily by, ages, where we're trying to separate people from the worship service, which is a thing that's quite common in America, in Protestant and even Catholic traditions, where they divide the body up so that they could focus on their age group. But we found that keeping people together, keeping the children in the worship service as much as possible, and having those times of trapeza, the meals together. We even, every Thursday before our kind of catechism study, we have a meal together. And some of the best interactions is when people of different generations actually interact. And this might be the one place in their entire life, or in the entire week, where there's intergenerational communication. And, forgive me, but just one short story is we had one young man who came to the mission when he was, for lack of a better term or word, homeless. But actually through the community and through some not an older man, but a mature man in the parish, found a job doing landscaping. And not only that, but they became genuine friends and are genuine friends. And one day I was asking this young man how he was doing, and he says, "I'm doing fantastic. So and so just taught me," he sat me down, and I have like a 5-year goal financially. I'm going to rebuild my credit. I'm going to start, putting some stuff away. And he's like, "Man, I never had anybody who sat me down to teach me finances and budgeting." And that's the type of stuff that really only happens when you have that cross-generational pollination. And that's just a practical thing. I think also spiritually, I mean, people can't share where they haven't gone. And so if we separate people out into their peer groups, who's going to share wisdom? You only have the exchange of knowledge and experience, but not wisdom, and there's no call to maturity. So yeah, absolutely. I think men's groups can be great. We have like a women's crochet group that meets every once in a while. I think also, given our landscape, maybe specific single ministries, or some type of like way of getting single Orthodox Christians, not just in a single parish, but regionally together, might be a very helpful, value-added additional ministry. But the core life of the church must be together, because we are called to Christ as one, and we need to maintain that oneness, even if our culture wants to divide us off and to optimize things.
Mm-hmm. So is it safe to say, from both of your experience, that the younger generations have been open to intermingling with, some of the older generations, gleaming that expertise or even asking questions? One of the things that comes to my mind, I serve in a fairly big parish. It's growing, and a lot of young mothers. We also have a lot of older generations, help with raising kids, or just, subtle questions, things like that. Have you found that in your time as in your ministry, that the younger generations are open to this?
Okay, Father Elijah has to answer this one first, otherwise it's always going to be me. That's
Okay.
not good. You don't want the old guy to always say something first.
All right. Well, thank you, Father. Yeah, I absolutely have seen that. I mean, I think part of it is, young and old, we all like to eat. And so using food, there's something beautiful about breaking bread together. And there's something beautiful about participating in that. And yeah, and I find that a lot of the young are really benefited by the relationship with the old. I mean, some of it's maybe at first just novelty, like, oh, I've never known someone like a couple decades older than me. But then I think both of them start to find that cross-pollination, where I think the wisdom and the stability of the older folks kind of trickles down, and it gives a lot of young people who are tossed to and fro by a very hectic and fragmented culture, like, wow, maybe I could be like that in a decade, or this is a goal, or hashtag, squad goals, hashtag, like life goals. It gives them something to aspire to. And I find also for the older generation, like it's very validating and invigorating to be able to share your knowledge and to be able to have people that treat you as an equal, as a friend, so I find that both sides, I haven't seen any of our older members spurn the friendship of the younger, and I've been very surprised by how much the young are getting to know the older people. And I think some things like, meals and, hikes or outings or dinners or crochet clubs can be great places for them to interact. So I do think that there might be some role in these type of para-liturgical or para-parish activities that don't necessarily have to be sponsored by the parish or the mission, but just an intentionality of invitation, living a life of invitation. If I'm going to go run some errands, maybe I should call up someone and see if they need to run some errands too, and let's do it together. I want to go on a hike, maybe I'll call someone else to go for a hike too. And just building that into the culture of participation and sharing our lives with others. And yeah, absolutely. It's one of my greatest joys to see like a 19-year-old and a 60-year-old chatting it up over really cheap, horrible pizza from around the corner because we didn't have time to, have a nice, beautiful trapeza, but we got some pizza, some donuts, some coffee, and we're talking about life, and it's beautiful.
I've noticed a lot of that happening. We're building a parish school now, and I see a lot of these things happening very, what I see as organically. The young guys have the strong muscles and they're not tired. But the old guys are showing them, okay, this is you're going to save yourself a lot of time if you do this cut rather than these 3 other cuts, and just kind of passing that from one to another. I've seen that be super profitable, and it carries over into the community as a whole. So I think that the core of our lives has to always be the divine liturgy. That's the worship is the core of Orthodox Christianity, but the community is a real community. If it's a real community, then it means that things have to get done there. And if the community is working together, then these things just kind of get passed one to another. I see it with the women also. The same thing happens when something is like that is going on. And I've just been super enthused about that. And so I think it's sometimes it needs some, not connecting of dots, but at least showing like, hey, these are the dots. Let's see if we can connect. But I think that the best times are when it's completely organic, and we just see that happening. So it happens at, let's say, at a work day, but then you see these guys sitting together maybe after the liturgy and talking about something. I don't know what they're talking about, but maybe they're talking about that or something else. But to me, like that's how it should be. That's how it should be. The wisdom is being passed from one generation to another. And I think once the young people kind of catch how valuable that wisdom is, then we're more or less off to the races. We establish a culture of that.
Wonderful. Thank you. And sort of kind of a spin-off to this question, I've had many people mention to me, once a mission establishes, becomes full-grown parish and grows, that there's such thing as DNA of a parish, which kind of I have a problem sometimes, putting 2 and 2 together in my head. Is there such thing as a parish DNA, once it gets established from a mission to a parish? And is there danger, with the influx of a lot of people who have converted from other traditions into Orthodoxy and changing that DNA, or affecting it? And how is that addressed? Maybe Father Gregory, since you kind of have more of an established parish, we can start, and then we can go to Father Elijah, get a different viewpoint from the beginnings.
Yeah, when I came to this parish, I would say more or less it was a mission. And despite the priest, over a few years, they've managed to turn it more into a parish. Where like now I'm a full-time priest, and thank God for that. So we were able to see some of that. So there's definitely a culture in every parish. Never really thought about it as DNA, but more as a culture. Not unlike like workplaces have a culture too. I would say that it's very similar. But I think that the danger is that there's not enough influx of new people, and that the thing gets old and morbid and crusty, and it's not alive anymore. Where it becomes like, well, we've always done it this way, so we need to do it this way. There's value to that on one hand. On the other hand, without challenge, nobody grows. And it seems to me that since the church is designed to bring new people into the faith, when that's absolutely just not happening, something is not right. And that's going to reflect, or maybe that's a reflection of the culture of the parish. So I'm a big proponent of challenge is an important part of our life as Orthodox Christians, and especially in a parish. There's no reason to blow something up just for the sake of blowing it up. But new people bring their own baggage to the parish, but just because it's new doesn't mean it's bad. I think it's important to kind of see like, okay, we'll leave off most of this probably that you're bringing with you, but you might have some good ideas, and you haven't been kind of poisoned, quote unquote, by our culture. You don't know exactly how we do everything. So if we listen to you without trying to co-opt what you're bringing, we're probably going to get something good from that. So I think it's a balance. A lot of things in Orthodoxy are about trying to find the middle path. But I would say that yes, it could be dangerous if we, doubled the size of the parish with new converts in 1 year. That I wouldn't call it dangerous. It'd be a completely different kind of challenge. But I think the other challenge is just to say, well, you're coming to Orthodoxy and therefore you have nothing to offer. I don't think that that's right either. I think we really have to find that middle path.
Thank you. Brother Elijah?
Yeah, so we have a unique situation in that our mission, which has about 20 baptized believers, 20 catechumens, and about a dozen inquirers right now. The only cradle Orthodox person we have in our mission is my 2-year-old daughter. And so it's definitely a different challenge because, of course, there's the temptation to bring in so much stuff. And I think with a mission in general, the support of the mission, not just financially, but more important than spiritually, is important. And so, Archpriest Paul at Holy Ascension, they've kind of become almost a sister church of sorts. And so any of the midweek feast days that we don't have the bandwidth to offer at our mission, I'm up there serving with him. And he's teaching me liturgics and making sure that as the priest over this mission, and that I'm acquiring the tradition of the church, and that I'm being formed, and that I can offer something to the new converts in our mission, to the catechumens, and that we often encourage our catechumens to take pilgrimages to monasteries and to other parishes in the area, because I think it's really great that we have so many converts. And I think it can give a certain life to a parish, but it can also come with a whole slew of pastoral issues, and formation is a really big thing. And so more lengthy and in-depth catechesis. As a mission priest of a convert parish, I mean, a lot of our catechumens and even newly illumined are very high touch pastorally. I mean, my phone is usually, with texts and calls, it's ceaseless throughout the day. And it's wonderful because the beauty of having people that don't come with a set culture DNA, a set Orthodox DNA, is that you can really have a lot of influence in forming them in the faith, and to kind of bring together, as Blessed Seraphim Rose says, both zeal and patience, really trying to cultivate both of those. And with converts, you have zeal, but we need a lot of the mature parishes and priests and faithful in our area to give us patience and to show us what it looks like to be a mission that grows into a parish that's been around for 5 years, a decade, or decades, or a century. And so I think one of the biggest guiding principles in this is something I heard once, and this is not original to me, but I find it very helpful, is our missiological perspective on what the future of Orthodoxy in America looks like. Are we trying to make Orthodoxy American, or are we trying to make America Orthodox? And that might seem like it's the same thing, but I think there's difference in the detail. And are we willing to compromise aspects of the tradition that we've received to make things easier or more American? Or are we willing to push back and say, no, this is the faith we've been delivered. Some of this might seem difficult to Americans, but it's like hard medicine that actually produces healing. And that we shouldn't, as hard as it is, especially as a mission priest, we should rejoice at all. We shouldn't be afraid of all the people that are coming into the parish. But like Christ, we shouldn't be afraid of those who leave. Like, Christ was very clear. Sometimes he spoke hard sayings, to see and to test people, to see if whether they're being drawn by the Spirit or by their stomach, And I think that's a really hard thing. It's always hard to see someone come and get close, but then realize, oh, Orthodoxy is going to cost me everything. I can't have my cake and eat it too. I need to truly convert. People that are coming from Anglican or Catholic or even Protestant backgrounds, this isn't just putting a different license plate on your car. This is getting a whole new car. This is actually conversion. And I think it was Bishop Luke on the Holy Trinity Jordanville podcast talked about the catechetical process. And he said, many people think if I have a pagan, a Protestant, and a Catholic, well, the Catholic will catechize in 3 months, the Protestant a year, and the pagan 3 years. He's like, it's almost the opposite. And of course, he was speaking in hyperbole here, I believe. But he's like, the pagan, I can catechize in 3 months. The Protestant, maybe a year. The Catholic, 3 years or more, because sometimes they unintentionally bring in baggage thinking that things are the same. Versus a pagan, where sometimes their worldview is actually more Orthodox, just needs to be put back the right side up. Some of their intuition and stuff is a lot more traditional and a lot more in line with the worldview of Orthodoxy, but they need to be told the rest of the story. And so I'm not giving that as timelines, but just, we need to be very careful to properly catechize people. And sometimes if someone comes in, they're like, oh, I'm a traditional Catholic, let's catechize me in a weekend. It's like, no. It's probably going to take you a little bit longer because we use the same words a lot, but we mean different things. And so I just think that we need to not be afraid of them coming, but also not be afraid to commit them to the Lord and to maybe see them leave for a season until they can properly come in and are ready to convert and not just join a different denomination, if that makes sense.
Perfect. Father, did you have something to add since you unmuted?
Yeah, I was just thinking about people who leave, and since this is focused on missionary work and life, I think it's important to not despair. And Father kind of closed the circle on that there at the end, but I just want to throw in my 2 cents that I think it's important not to despair if someone leaves. We have to pray for them, but this person may just not be quite ready. Just because somebody leaves doesn't mean they're leaving forever. We tend to have this very black and white view about catechism, and I've had several people that kind of circled back numerous times before they were ready to really kind of burn their boat, as the old-fashioned missionaries used to do. And so I think we shouldn't despair, but just pray, commit them to God, as Father Elijah said, and trust that he cares for them and he will lead them to salvation.
Wonderful. Good. Thank you for that. That was very enlightening. Thank you both for that. Kind of somewhat switching gears to catechism. I know that certain priests like to, I don't know, there's in some circles and in maybe some jurisdictions, there's more of a standardized catechism, whereas in other jurisdictions, and maybe you can't speak to all, but maybe just kind of your basic understanding in the general terms. How effective do you believe catechism has been in American Orthodoxy, so to speak? And do you believe it should be standardized, either per jurisdiction or even pan-Orthodox wise?
So I think it'd be very difficult to try to shoehorn everyone into the same exact program. I just don't think you can do that. We have a program, a catechism program, but we understand that different folks are going to need a different amount of time. They might have to go through it twice. They may need additional readings. They may need less readings and some other discussions. Like I'm not, and probably because there was no standard catechism for me that was imposed upon me as a young priest. So, but my inclination is that it's good to have some standardized program in the parish. There should be a plan, and people should have more or less know, okay, this is more or less the plan about how this works. For instance, we tend to baptize adult catechumens on Holy Saturday or the Saturday before Pentecost, and try to get people to get through Great Lent at least once before they become Orthodox. Anyway, without going into all the details, I'm not sure that a standard catechism would make sense. I could see where there would be like sort of standard outcomes that the bishop would want. For instance, we actually have we have a rule in our diocese that people who come to the church have to be catechized and you before they're baptized. And you may think, well, that's just ridiculous. Why would there be such a thing? Well, in Orthodoxy, there's no rules if there wasn't a problem, right? The canons weren't written just for fun. There's a reason that a canon was written, and there's a reason that rule exists, because people were being baptized without being catechized. So there needs to be guidance, but I'm not sure that you could just say everybody has to follow this exact program, and then if you pass the test, we baptize you. I'm not sure that works. So, but Father Elijah's probably may have a different view on this. I'd like to hear what he has to say.
Yeah. Yeah, it definitely would be much more convenient if there was just a universal catechism that fell from the sky that we could just send to all parishes, and it would just produce saints. But we don't have that, and because we don't have that, it must be because that's not the best way to make saints and to prepare people for baptism. Yes, there was more standardized catechesis in the past, but that's because they had catechetical schools, and there was different catechetical schools. And I think our experience, or my experience, is that the catechetical process is a beautiful process, but it's very textured and layered. And with such an influx of catechumens that we have, we've actually, after Holy and Great Lent and Pascha, we're going to be splitting into 2 classes of catechumens, because we have some catechumens who have been with us for almost 3 years, and many that have been with us for over a year. And we're getting into more heavier stuff with them and actually trying to really teach them what prayer is. And it's not just the basic, tenets of the Orthodox faith, but really what is it to even if they can't cultivate it already, but what is the goal of this? That they're to be baptized, and then what? Talking about and introducing to a certain extent ideas of watchfulness and noetic prayer, and letting them know, yeah, you might not be able to experience this yet, but this is what you're growing into. It's not just affirm the creed, know how to say the Lord's Prayer. Those are all good. They should understand it, but getting them really ready for the fight. I know there was I heard several priests recently talk about how catechism is like boot camp. And so the shorter the boot camp and the less equipped a soldier is, the more likely they are going to be receive a casualty or be harmed when they enter into the battle. And so the more we can equip them and the more we can specialize their catechism, I think the better. And so we're going to be splitting into more of a beginner catechism, which will be really helpful for some of our new catechumens. But then our current catechism, we've actually had many of our newly illumined baptized parishioners continue to come, because I think once a catechumen, but always catechizing or always being catechized, even if we would call it by a different term. And so often the catechetical process can be very difficult and textured given what backgrounds you have people coming from. We've had an influx of not only neo-pagans and Buddhists and Wiccans, but we've also had people from Roman Catholic backgrounds. Just last year, we baptized a former Roman Catholic subdeacon. And so what we found is we just have to go to the beginning, and we need to really, one of the things that we found helpful in catechizing people in North America is to help them understand the water in which they swim in North America, and to actually understand the schism of Rome and its consequences, and the rise of rationalism, and a lot of their dispositions that they're very unaware of. And this can be a painful process of kind of coming to realize that you've been swimming in these toxic waters of the West that has lost the nous and lost, has intellectualized the faith and lost the deep heart. And it can be a hard process to realize that we need to grow out of that, and to disentangle some of these things on not just an intellectual level, but on a heart level can be very difficult. And it's hard to deduce down to just a standard program. And so with most of our catechumens, we have the catechetical meeting, every Sunday or every Thursday. But then I'm checking in on them, and we're having one-on-ones, and it's quite pastorally extensive. But I just don't know any other way to do it right now with just the pastoral need of, we really need to equip these people well, and we need to have some level of standardization, but then we need to really step into the pastoral thing and apply the medicine of catechesis appropriately to the specific ails of the catechumen. And not only just the catechumen, but the newly illumined. We don't just say you're baptized now you're on your own, but I've heard of many parishes that have had even programs, for a year or two after baptism to help make sure that they're getting established in the faith and really learning to pray. So excuse my windy response, but it's something that's very close to my heart, because I don't think any of us want to prepare someone for baptism and see them fall away. I mean, we need to really equip them deeply. And this is a big issue that I continue to seek wisdom and experience from other more seasoned priests who've walked this path before me.
It's interesting what you said about how some of your catechumens keep coming to catechism. That's happening to us too. It's not unusual at all. And so it's just interesting for me to see that that's happening elsewhere too. You're the first other priest that I heard that from. Doesn't mean it's not happening everywhere. It's just, I thought that's very interesting.
Well, part of it might be because we feed them every Thursday too.
Well, there you go. There you go.
That works.
It also becomes a community thing. So yeah.
Nothing wrong with that.
Okay. Is there a formula on how long the catechism lasts before you move to baptism, or is it kind of on an individual basis for both of you?
I'd say not too fast and not too slow.
Okay.
And I hate to be, I'm not trying to be cute, but it is different for different people.
Okay.
You have to kind of see where the person's coming from and how they progress too, because for some people it's just flows more smoothly, and for other people it's less smoothly. At least from my point of view, I don't think you can say it has to be this long or whatever, but we sort of do have an idea, at least in our parish, where we usually kind of think, well, about a year from the time that you are becoming serious. Not from the time you first hit the door, but about a year from the time you're really wanting to live an Orthodox life and move in this direction. That's kind of what we have. But I'm using all of these soft terms to sort of round it. It's not precise, but I would say about that is what we're usually shooting for here.
Awesome. Thank you. Father Elijah.
I think for me, I won't mention all of my things that I look for, so that if a future catechumen listens to this, they don't think of how to try to, okay, I need to check these boxes. But I will say this, absolutely not too fast, not too slow, a lot of pastoral considerations. But what I have found in my limited experience, is I want to make sure that the person preparing for Holy Illumination has begun to understand what it might be to pray. that they're actually established in a rhythm of prayer, because and not just merely an intellectual prayer, but really understanding that orthodoxy is a matter of the heart. And secondly, to be honest, for me, what often determines a catechumen's time as a catechumen is waiting for them to actually encounter suffering and encounter opposition, and to see how they deal with it. You know, I pretty much with all of our catechumens, we've seen them be given a taste of a cross during their catechumenate. And to be honest, some of them have not borne it well, and have, you know, it's been delayed and they've had to circle back. But other ones have endured suffering and pushback and family issues and different things, and have persevered. And that's something that I really look for. I think a taste of the battle as a catechumenate as a catechumen is really important, because I think there's a unique and deep encounter with Christ through that. And so that's something, I mean, it's kind of weird. Like I don't wish for my catechumens to suffer, but that's something I'm kind of pastorally looking for, to see how they deal with opposition. And then lastly, too, just really, especially coming from a Western perspective, or Western context, making sure that they realize that this is a lifetime goal, that in baptism they're being married to the church, they're being joined to Christ, they are dying, and that this isn't a denomination. If you move somewhere else, and you can't find an Orthodox church, you're not going to just go to the local Catholic church or Anglican church. And I think another thing related to that is making sure that when they come to Orthodoxy, they're just not coming here because they assume that we're conservative, because there can be lots of conservative churches out there, but that they actually understand that we're traditional, and that tradition that we hold to is the faith once delivered to the saints. And that's, you know, as some of our young catechumens like to say, I don't think they always understand the weight of it, but, you know, orthodoxy or death, you know, and that would be really the genuine cry of their heart, not just a meme that they post, but something where it's like, if for some reason I was to be that person who was isolated 4 hours from a parish, that I would align my entire life to go as often as I can, that I wouldn't compromise and just go to the conservative, you know, Latin Mass or the conservative Anglican church or something like that. That if need be, I'd set up a little chapel in my house and just say the prayers and the Typica when I can't make it to service, and that this is a lifelong commitment. So again, forgive my long-windedness, but yeah.
Thank you. Father Gregory?
I have nothing else to add. I think Father Elijah did a great job there.
Wonderful, wonderful. So we are nearing the final 10 minutes of the discussion, and I just wanted to had a couple of actually 3 or 4 questions in the Q&A that you guys have indirectly answered. Fathers, thank you for that. So I'll ask the one kind of lengthy question. It's from Jonah Martin, and I think he's familiar with Father Elijah, and likewise. I don't know if you've seen it, but I'll read it out loud for everyone else. It says, my family moved to rural southern Iowa. We worship an hour away at a Serbian monastery, but we feel called to build an Orthodox community here in our rural Protestant town of 1,800 souls. We are the only Orthodox family. We are opening a farm store that includes an Orthodox bookstore and prayer chapel. Jonah says, I'm beginning a men's group, but I am seeking some Orthodox structure that can be applied to a non-Orthodox brotherhood. Believes he's making progress, but would like both of your perspectives, Father. Says hi to Father Elijah.
Hello, Jonah. I'm actually been meaning to connect with you. Thank you so much for your question. Father Gregory, would you mind if I go first?
Please do. My dogs are barking, so please
Okay.
do.
Wonderful. Well, Jonah, I think your situation is typical of many people in North America right now. And my heart and my prayer is that through the prayers of the new martyrs, through the prayers of the martyrs of North America and the new saints, of the saints of North America, that we would, if the Lord tarries, that we would one day get to a place where everybody is within walking distance of a parish. You know, that's our hope, is that, but it starts here. And there's a saying that is, excuse me, it can sound very strange, but anything, but I love it. It's a farming. When I was doing sustainable agriculture, I learned it that way. And it's the saying, anything worth doing is worth doing poorly. Which sounds kind of strange, like, oh, you're just going to not give any effort to it. No, no, no. Anything worth doing is worth doing poorly and getting better. It means don't wait till you have a 1,000-acre ranch to start farming. If you want to farm, start with a garden and then grow it. You know, use what you have now, and then just be faithful with that and try to see if the Lord gives increase. And that, so if something's worth doing, it's worth doing poorly until you can do it better. And I mean, our mission started 2.5 years ago with I was unemployed. We had no funding, but we had the blessing of Metropolitan Hilarion of blessed memory, and we had an Auntie Menson, and we went to Lowe's and got some wood to create chant stands and iconostasis and all these different things. And we, during COVID, started a chapel in our garage. Now, that is a bit different situation because I am a priest, but I don't think that can be too much different than something in your situation. I think the biggest thing with all of this is to seek a blessing, and that if you can connect with your bishop and ask to have a blessing to start doing typica or just reader services, or just to have some type of a proto-Orthodox presence in your town, a blessing of a hierarch for something like this goes an amazing way, and just a year later, we have a storefront mission, and we're kind of bursting at the seams and looking to acquire land and and create like an eco village and build a temple someday. But all that started mainly just with the grace of God and the blessing of a bishop. And so I think use whatever resources you have and be faithful with them. And, if it's worth doing, then it's worth doing in your garage. It's worth doing at the cafe or the cafe or whatever you have. And I really believe that many people in our culture and in our country are looking for the true faith. And as much as this is not a typical missional mandate or missional saying, if you build it, they will come. Not in the sense of let's build a big program and automatically people will come, but the monastic missionaries of our faith, often the first thing they set up is an altar, and they started offering the liturgy, and that is what predates all mission, is the divine liturgy. Now, without a priest, you can't offer that, but what you can offer is prayers. And I believe that if you were to offer faithful prayers with the desire and treating the saints of North America to establish a mission there, that if God so wills, it will be done. And you'll be amazed with what the Lord does through that, and that many dioceses and many ministries like Share the Faith and Orthodox Missions to America, or Mission to America, can come alongside you to support that work, not just through prayer, but also through resources and connections. So may it be blessed. But seek of an episcopal blessing, but may that desire be blessed.
I
Father
couldn't
Gregory.
agree more with Father Elijah. It's the key is you want to be under a bishop and be in obedience. That is absolutely so crucial. There won't be any fruit no good fruit will come from that until that's the case. So if you're in Iowa, that means you're in our diocese, which means you need to talk to the secretary of the diocese, which is talking to you right now. So reach out to me. There's another community in Southern Iowa. We just established a parish in Iowa City. That's not Southern Iowa, but in any case, things are really taken off in that central part of our diocese. And I think the key is to get the bishop's blessing. So reach out, talk to us. We'll provide you the resources that we can. But with the bishop's blessing, then you can have hope that things are going to go. And what Father Elijah said about the services, completely agree with that. you're not a priest. Neither was Saint Nina, and she did a pretty good job in Georgia. So you don't have to go live under a bush like she did, probably, but nonetheless, with God's help, if you have the blessing of the bishop, then you can expect that you will also have a fruitful ministry there.
Thank you. Thank you. Now I've been prodded from the tech side here to ask one final question in my absent-mindedness. Bear with me as we wrap up here. As we all know that both the Antiochian Archdiocese, which I am a deacon in, and Russian Orthodox Church outside of Russia, have Western Rite parishes. The question is, what do you believe, fathers, is the role of Western Rite parishes in America, and do you see that turning out positively for us?
Well,
He unmuted first.
yeah. Yeah, well, I'll start because I came into Orthodoxy through ROPOR Western Rite, and now I'm a resident of the Western American Diocese under Archbishop Kirill, and we continue to celebrate the Liturgy of St. Gregory on Sundays, but also at Holy Ascension and other ROPOR parishes, I'm being trained and serve and can celebrate with the Liturgy of St. John Chrysostom. And so I will say this, let me say this, because I know this is a controversial topic. I'll tell you what I think the role of the Western Rite is not. The role of the Western Rite is not to provide a way for Catholics and Anglicans to become Orthodox but never convert. It's not that. It's not changing your license plate. And it's not a way of giving converts an Orthodoxy light or something like that. And it's not something that we secretly hope will become the main rite of America. I know there's some very zealous young men that get infatuated with the Western Rite and come in and say, oh, this is the rightful rite of America. And in 100 years, this will be the only rite that we establish. And I absolutely don't think that is the case. I think if we look at the lives of the saints who celebrated it or promoted it, it was a pastoral exception. It was a pastoral hope or situation to help to bring, it had a missional purpose of bringing souls into Orthodoxy. And I can attest that for our mission, I don't know if we'd exist if it wasn't for that pastoral process and path for us as former Anglicans to humble ourselves and be submitted to the church. And, for many years, as an Anglican cleric, I thought that I could walk like a duck, pray like a duck, dress like a duck, and be a duck. I thought that I could be a witness to Orthodoxy in the Anglican Church. But then I came to the reality that unless you're in communion, you're not Orthodox. And so it doesn't matter how much I pray or teach or study or try to simulate an Orthodox life. I couldn't do that outside of communion. And so I think the Western Rite can have pastoral applications for bridging the gap for many of us people in the West that wake up one day to realize that we are in schism and that we need to come home to Holy Orthodoxy. But I will also say, I think the Western Rite can have a missional application, but we need to also realize that because it was a rite separated from the church for 1,000 years, and it's just having been reestablished in the last 100 years, that we need to be humble and we need to realize that we need to acquire the faith from our bishops, our hierarchy, and from those who are mature in the excuse me, I'm stumbling over my words, but we need to be established in just the Orthodox faith, not in the Western Rite, but just the Orthodox faith as it's been delivered. And as someone who lived overseas in China for many years, I could find my little enclave of English speakers in China. But if I only spoke Chinese, I would find myself in a very small world. And as soon as I learned, if I only spoke English, I'd live in quite a small world. But once I started to learn Chinese and experience the wider culture of China, a whole new world opened up to me. And I think, that's something that we encourage in our mission, is that I want any of our people who have been brought to the faith through the Western Rite to also be bilingual with the Eastern Rite. And to be honest, this might just be how we do it in our parish, but I mean, the core of spirituality in our parish is not different than what you'd find down the road in another Roquefort parish, in the sense of, you know, the Jesus prayer. And we use the Jordanville prayer book for morning and evening prayers. All of our sacraments, other than Sunday morning Eucharist, we do through the Book of Needs. So everybody who's made a catechumen, who's baptized, we use just the Roquefort standards for that. And so we encourage our people to become bivocational or bilingual liturgically, so that they can acquire the fullness of the faith, and to have the places that are still maybe lacking in Western Rite be supplemented by just the faith as it's once been delivered and received by us through the Russian Church. And so I know that might be a little bit different than other philosophies, but in Roquefort, we celebrate the Western Rite within the bosom of the Russian Church. And so we take that very seriously, and we lean towards many of these practices because they're time tested and they've made saints. And so why not? So.
Thank you.
Yeah, I don't think I could say it better than Father Elijah. I think he explained it very, very well. Yeah, and so it's after the Metropolitan Hilarion passed away, now the Western Rite parishes have become part of each diocese, whereas before they reported directly to the Metropolitan. And that's a process which we've welcomed and been happy to have our Western Rite clergymen more integrated into the sort of clergy brotherhood of the diocese. So I think it's a really exciting time in the Western Rite, at least in Roquefort. I can't speak to the Antiochians. I mean, I did have actually a decent amount of exposure to them, spending time at Antiochian Village, but on a detailed level, I can't really speak to it. So no reason for me to try to do that.
Thank you. Thank you. Well, fathers, I am very, very much grateful, for the time you've given us. It's been a very blessed conversation. And I beg your forgiveness if I've overstepped my boundaries with any of these questions, doing a preemptive Forgiveness Sunday. Forgive me, a sinner. Again, thank you. And just for reference, this video will be shown again on our YouTube page. If you search Orthodox Christian Ministry to America with Share the Faith, you'll be able to find it. Okay. Thank you very much. We hope to talk to you again. Please pray for us, pray for our organization. We'll definitely remember you guys in our prayers. Thank you so much. Thank you. Have a blessed week.